Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to my Facebook Live broadcast on Tuesday, it's the 7th of April already. So welcome aboard. Glad you can join me. Well, hopefully you'll be able to stay here for the whole of the 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it may turn out to be that we talk today. Welcome aboard. Give me a shout if you're there. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear, and hopefully, hopefully you're getting something out of this. Hey Phyllis, nice of you to join me again. Thank you. I hope people are getting stuff out of this. Ultimately, it's about connection. It's about just really having something to share on this sort of day-to-day basis while we're sort of sheltering in place and stuck in our own homes, working from home. Obviously, this is kind of my lunchtime thing. It's the theme is that it's lunchtime here in California, so I wanted to spend this time talking about different topics, various topics every day. Today, if you guys don't mind, I want to talk about freedom, okay? But I'm not talking about the freedom that we see or that we think we have guaranteed, enshrined in our Constitution. It's not that kind of freedom that I'm talking about. In some respects, it's kind of like mental freedom, really, more than anything else. One of the things is somebody shared an article from the New York Times today, and I've been reading it, and it's really interesting. It's about what I would call mental freedom and resilience and kind of optimism. And Viktor Frankl, who's a Holocaust survivor, coined the term tragic optimism. And according to the sort of definition of what he meant, tragic optimism is the ability to maintain hope and find meaning in life despite the inescapable pain, loss, and suffering that we go through. Right? I'm sorry, I'm reading this as didn't want to paraphrase, but basically, what he's saying is, there is hope and meaning in life, despite the fact that everybody loses something, everybody loses someone. It's tragic, it's full of loss and suffering, and we're experiencing that right now. I mean, this pandemic has really shifted the way a lot of people address their disappointment, their grief, their loss. It's a really difficult time, and mental health is a huge issue right now for people, and that's part of the reason why I took the advice of a very, very great friend, lovely Christy. Thank you for suggesting that I do this. And we really do kind of need to connect in this situation. And I guess my sort of feeling here is that this tragic optimism, I guess, that I have is that I try to find the good in all situations. And unfortunately, it sometimes feels like there isn't any good in any situation. But let me point out that the person who coined this, Viktor Frankl, is a Holocaust survivor. I don't know that there could be any worse situation, for a young man at that point in time, in that point in history, to have been in, to have coined that phrase of tragic optimism. And I mean, his resilience is what kept him alive and helped him to survive the Holocaust. So when I say I'm talking about mental freedom, what I'm really also kind of addressing is tragic optimism, because guys like Viktor Frankl were, optimistic. They saw the good in the situation, no matter how horrible that situation was. And And I mean, it's clear that, you know, we don't want to be Pollyanna-ish around this. You know, we don't want to bury our heads in the sand and pretend like it's not happening. You know, it's not about denial. It's not about distraction. It's about seeing the situation for what it is and trying to see the silver lining to the cloud. And there is some pretty heavy clouds going on around us now. But it is a matter of degree of acceptance, okay? I'm not saying that, you know, you have to accept what's going on. You don't. It is what's happening. You know, as they say, it is what it is. But the reality is that, you know, in order to build resilience, in order to be a tragic optimist, you know, it doesn't mean that you deny the fact that this tragedy is happening, this horrible, you know, pandemic is happening. You're not denying it. You're not distracting yourself from it. But, you know, you are kind of dealing with it in a way that is more optimistic. And I'm not saying that because, you know, I'm not talking about this fake optimism that, you know, that kind of permeates a lot of our Facebook feeds and things like that. That's not what I'm trying to drive at here. What I'm trying to get at is that, you know, and this is something that I want to get right, so I might want to read this. Just hang on here. In psychology research, resilient people do have intensely negative reactions to trauma. That is, you know, psychological research. You know, when my wife died, I had an intensely negative reaction to that trauma. Okay, I still had you know, what is described as despair, stress, but I acknowledged the fact that I lost my wife. My wife died. I acknowledged that. I didn't want to accept it at first, but I did. Eventually, I did, because as the saying, or sort of the psychology research comes up with, even in the darkest places, the tragic optimist sees a glimmer of light, and this ultimately sustains them. Sorry, I had to read that. And to me, that is what I describe as mental freedom, okay? Knowing that, and I guess this is the sort of, you know, the common phrase for all of this is, this too shall pass. It will be a different world, and I'm optimistic that it will be a much better world as a result. That, you know, this community building that we're doing, this creation that we're building out of this tragedy, will help us become more resilient. It will help us become more loving and kind and compassionate, less judgmental of others and of ourselves, like I talked about yesterday. You know, I really feel that, you know, and I'm optimistic, that, you know, tragically optimistic, that things will change for the better. And I really, really do hope that they do, for everyone, not just for the, you know, for the wealthy, for the, you know, for the people who are capitalizing on all of this. I really hope that we as a humanity, as a human race, you know, will grow from this. That's my optimism. You know, in the wake of the Holocaust, there was this mind-blowingly, you know, amazing reaction to what had happened in the, you know, in that period of time. You know, across Europe, there was a lot of soul searching. Across the, you know, the world, there was a lot of soul searching around the tragedy that unfolded during World War II. And, you know, in the wake of World War II, you know, we had this massive boom. Yeah, okay, baby boomers and all of that too. But, and sorry if you're a baby boomer, I'm not disparaging you. I'm Generation X. I'm that one who's used to this whole, you know, living at home in the worst of times, the latchkey kid generation. But I honestly feel that that's, you know, that's what has built the resilience that a lot of us kind of embody now. And, you know, I do see glimmers of hope. I see neighbors buying groceries for elderly neighbors, or offering to, whether whether they're doing it or not, they're at least making the offer. There's people that are, spending more time with their children and doing, things at home, crafts, and teaching their children. I read something a couple of weeks ago before I started all of this that, now is a great time to teach your kids how to sew, how to do the laundry, how to load the dishwasher, how to change their oil in their car, if they're, driving. It's, assuming you guys know how to do that, by the way, because, these cars these days, it's a little bit more difficult than it used to be. But the reality is that, there's a really amazing amount of connection that's going on. Yes, there's a dark side to what's going on too, and I've read all sorts of reports about that. But, I do have this sort of tragic optimism about what's going on, and that comes back to what I sense in myself as, as mental freedom, right? It's what, Viktor Frankl experienced when he was in the concentration camps. He knew that at any moment he could have been chosen to be exterminated. Yet he still chose to, maintain that hope in the, and understand that there was meaning to this life. Despite that, that whole horrible situation. He didn't deny it. He didn't reject that it was there. He didn't sort of try to escape from it or distance himself from it or distract himself from it. He couldn't. I mean, where could he go in the middle of a concentration camp other than inside his own head? And that's the critical thing, is that, if we stay mentally aware and acknowledge, these circumstances, while it's hard to accept that there's all this tragedy and sorrow and sadness and everything that's going on around the world, it is a matter of degree of accepting that. And like I say, seeing the silver lining to the cloud. Because, yeah, it is a big dark cloud that's kind of hovering over the entire world. I mean, we've passed 1 million cases of COVID. There's, 330 plus 400,000 people in the United States alone. The UK has a horrendous, almost 10% of the people that are getting it are dying. That's a horrendous death rate if, it accelerates without, further stopping. It's going to be awful. But, I do think that there will be some significant changes after all of this. Maybe it'll result in breakthroughs in drug research. Maybe in the process of trying to find a cure for COVID, they find a cure for cancer. I don't know, but I have this hope, and I hold this hope out that, that something good will come out of this, because, I don't think that that the sort of, view that life is, brutish and short and horrible is the right one. Otherwise, what's the point, really? I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but, there is a point here, and it's all about connection. It's all about, being, open, kind, compassionate. That's how I feel anyway. And, and from my perspective, there's no reason why, we as a society can't do better, right? And I think that this, this scenario that we're in is really opening the door and opening the eyes of a lot of people, to what really is important. And, acknowledge, it's a horrible thing to have happened. I can't believe that the economy has tanked so dramatically, so quickly. Well, I'm not entirely sure that that's the case. I think there's a lot of commerce that's still taking place. A lot of people are still able to work from home, and that's really good. Yes, a lot of people have lost their jobs. I believe there's 6 million plus unemployment claims in the last couple of weeks, and that's horrendous. That's numbers of people out of work that rivals the Great Depression. And that is tragic. That is really, really horrible. And I acknowledge that. But, and I come back to yesterday's talk, and I talk about not judging yourself and not, not feeling like you have to do something in order to, come out of this as a better person or whatever. But, in all honesty, if you have lost your job, I can give an example of my daughter has. She's chosen to use this time. She's actually studying to get her real estate license, which is great for her because, if she decides to then go into, selling real estate after after this is all over, then, she should be able to do that. But I think, coming back to my original point here is, this tragic optimism and the mental freedom that I think we need to try to cultivate. Freedom is, it's an amazing feeling. Some people describe it as like being in the zone, right? If you're a sports person, you'll probably get this. So, when you're like super focused or whatever. Even if you're not a sports person, when you're doing work and you're really focused and it's as if time just doesn't exist. You're so focused on what you're doing and you get it done and you're so like, it's like really, really, effortless in some ways, and you just get through what you need to do. Well, that's being in the zone, right? And it's cultivating that feeling in everything that you do, which is really what mental freedom is all about. And, it's not about, denying what's going on around us, right? Or zoning out from what's going on around us. But it's taking that sort of the tragic optimism piece and moving it into a more sort of constructive piece, I guess, within your own head. I think really that's what Frankl did when he was in the concentration camp. Is he basically did mental gymnastics around things that he wanted to do with his life once he was free, and by envisioning and seeing that future. Down to the Technicolor reality of it, even though I guess Technicolor didn't exist then. But to see everything in the stark light that he felt he could, do something later on in his life, that is the sort of mental freedom, that we have. So, and a lot of times prisoners, prisoners in jail, use their imaginations to see their future after they've been released. Some don't, and I think that there's a lot of levels of acceptance around what it is that we want and need. But as soon as we've actually brought that acceptance into our minds and our hearts, really, that's when that sort of change can occur within us, right? And that's when we can become more mentally free. At least, that's how it's worked for me. And of course, all of these talks that I'm giving every day are, purely from my perspective. They're purely from my experience, wherever possible. I alluded earlier to how, I am a tragic optimist. and that is the kind of person that I am. Um, I don't deny that I'm an emotional person, and I actually, you know, like to articulate my emotions as much as possible. That doesn't make me soft or any less manly than anyone else. It just means that I am, who I am, and I have no problem being emotional or, vulnerable. And, here is the whole rub of being mentally free. Like I say, if we can find the good in all situations, even when there doesn't really seem or feel like there is any good in any situation, then, if we can find that, even just that glimmer of hope, then, then we are kind of building that mental freedom. And that's, like I said earlier, this is what a tragic optimist will do. They will, and I'm going to read this again because I read it earlier, but I don't know if everybody heard it. Even in the darkest of places, the tragic optimist sees glimmers of light, and this ultimately sustains them in whatever it is that they do. And looking forward, because we sense the tragedy. Thank you, Susan. Yes, I mean, I love that Viktor Frankl statement, the tragic optimist. And while resilience is built, right, is a sense of building this optimism in your body. Resilient people tend to fare better in circumstances here than non-resilient people, or people who suffer from a lack of tragic optimism, as it were. And people with tragic optimism are just as anxious. They feel the loss. They are fearful. They are hopeless at times. But they do see that there is a glimmer of light, right? There is light at the end of the tunnel. There's, that this too shall pass, right? I've said that a few times in these talks. And like I say, it's not denial. It's not distraction. It's not being Pollyanna and burying your head in the sand or ignoring everything and pretending it's all okay and, oh, everything's just fine and it's going to be great. In actual fact, I think that, it's not going to be just great for a long time. But like I said earlier on, I do hope that this scenario, this however this plays out over time, it does change our society for the better, I hope. And I think that, the fact that, I'm not the only one who's doing this sort of thing. I've seen a lot of people broadcasting live on Facebook and doing, presentations and offering free counseling services and all of that. It's a pretty amazing thing to see how people are rising to the challenge, and people are sharing their skills and their knowledge and their hearts, their minds, their compassion, their passion with others to help build a new community, a completely new kind of society out of this. And that's what really gives me hope. And it's, it's my, my sense of tragic optimism and the mental freedom that it's given me, and my tragic optimism has risen out of, becoming a widower, being, losing my wife to cancer, and, and trying to see the good that came out of that. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard to see what good came out of my wife dying, right? Well, it's changed me as a person. It's changed my children as people. It's driven me to be more helpful and kind and compassionate and caring and open and to push a message of love out to the world, right? And even if I only deliver that message and it resonates with one person, with one other person, then I've succeeded as far as I'm concerned. And that's why I say, tragic optimism is the key to, building mental freedom. And, Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. And this is what I am trying to do. I'm trying to embody that change that I want to see in the world. I want to see people create and be creative and be optimistic that we can change for the better. And, if you tell one friend that tells another friend and they tell another friend, that this could be a lot better and things could be a lot better, soon we've got a huge movement. We've got a huge, it could be massive. It's a snowball effect. It's, it's this whole sort of scenario around, just spread that, and it just multiplies, It's like the virus itself. Let's turn the virus on its head, right? And let's spread love instead of the virus, right? Let's spread compassion instead of the virus. Let's spread, joy instead of the virus, right? And that's what I want to do with these sessions. And I really hope that, people are enjoying them. And I'm coming up on my sort of half an hour time frame that I try to limit myself so that, if you do have only a limited time for your lunch or wherever you are, that you get the chance to do that. So I think it's a pretty good point where I can finish off and say, thank you all very much for joining me, for sharing your time with me. And please, join me again tomorrow. Join me every day. Interact. Send me questions. Send me ideas, things that you might want to talk about or want me to talk about. I don't know everything. I wish I did. But the fact that I really know nothing, all I know is my own experience and my own feelings, is really all I know. All these books behind me I've read in my lifetime, but the reality is that, right now they don't mean squat. They don't, this is just reality now, that it's a completely different world. It's changed and it's changing. And, I still maintain hope, and I still think that there's a lot of meaning in this lifetime. And despite all of the pain and the loss and the suffering that we're all going through, and the, and all of the negativity that we're being bombarded with, there is hope. There is meaning. And I think that as long as we're all, open and honest with ourselves and with each other, and we share compassion and love and kindness, and we spread that instead of the disease. So wash your hands, stay inside, if you can. I think that's where that's where we can head. We can head in the right direction as a people. And, like I said, this too shall pass. So thank you again for joining me once again on a Tuesday afternoon here in California. Been raining for the last couple of days, and it's going to rain, I guess, till the end of the week. So stuck in my office instead of in my kitchen where it's a little bit dreary. So anyway, please join me again tomorrow, same time, 12 p.m., noon, Pacific Standard Time. I really look forward to seeing and interacting with you again. Thank you for coming along, people. And have a great Tuesday. great rest of your Tuesday. Take care.